I am Tony Marshall, 62 years old, and I spent my life building skyscrapers across America as a construction foreman. Never thought I would be humiliated by my own daughter Amanda in an upscale restaurant. She kicked me out, telling me to have a hot dog for dinner, loser, when all I wanted was to reconnect after years of strain. What she did not know was that her workplace future would soon be in my hands. Before I get into my story, where are you watching from today? If you have ever felt disrespected by family, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to see how this unfolds. I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, where hard work was not just expected, but necessary for survival. My father left when I was 8, leaving my mother to raise me alone. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses during the day and waitressing at night, just to keep food on our table and a roof over our heads. I learned early that nothing in life comes easy. By 16, I was already working construction jobs after school and during summers. My first boss, Frank Peterson, saw something in me and took me under his wing. "Tony," he would say, "you got good hands and a better brain. Do not waste either." Those words stuck with me through every concrete pour and steel beam I helped place over the decades that followed. At 25, I met Diane while working on a commercial building downtown. She was bringing lunch to her father, who was the electrical contractor on the site. Our eyes met across the dusty construction area, and something just clicked. 6 months later, we were married in a small ceremony at her parents' church, with just close family and a few of my construction buddies in attendance. 3 years after that, Amanda came into our world. 7 pounds, 6 ounces of pure joy with Diane's bright blue eyes, and as we would later discover, my stubborn determination. Those early years were tough financially, but rich in everything that mattered. Our apartment was small, but it was always filled with laughter and love. I worked my way up from basic construction to crew leader and eventually foreman by the time Amanda was 10. Each promotion meant longer hours, but also better pay, which we desperately needed when Diane was diagnosed with breast cancer when Amanda was 12. The medical bills piled up faster than I could clear them, even with insurance. During those years, I regularly pulled 70-hour weeks, often coming home long after Amanda had gone to bed. I would peek into her room sometimes, just watching her sleep for a few minutes, before collapsing into bed myself, only to wake up before dawn to do it all again. It was exhausting, but I never complained. This was my family, and providing for them was not just my responsibility, it was my purpose. Diane fought her cancer with the same quiet strength she brought to everything in life. For 5 years, she battled through surgeries, chemotherapy, and radiation. Amanda, who had once been a cheerful, affectionate child, grew increasingly withdrawn during this time. I attributed it to the stress of watching her mother's health decline and my constant absence due to work. I kept telling myself we would have time to reconnect once things settled down. But things never settled down. Diane passed away when Amanda was 17, just months before her high school graduation. I was 45, suddenly a widower and single father to a grieving teenager who barely spoke to me anymore. At Diane's funeral, Amanda stood stoically beside me, accepting condolences with a composure that worried me. She did not cry, at least not where I could see. I heard her late at night sometimes, but when I would knock on her door, she would go silent. Despite our strained relationship, I was determined to give Amanda every opportunity in life. When she was accepted to Cornell University to study marketing and business, I took out a second mortgage on our modest house to cover what her scholarships did not. I never told her about this. She just knew her education was taken care of. The transformation that began during her mother's illness accelerated at college. Amanda called home less and less. When she did visit on holidays, she spoke differently, dressed differently, and seemed increasingly uncomfortable with our neighborhood, our house, and most painfully, with me. She would correct my grammar or give me disapproving looks when I used construction slang that had been part of my vocabulary for decades. When she graduated with honors, I sat in the audience bursting with pride, but also feeling profoundly out of place among the well-dressed, well-spoken families around me. Amanda introduced me to her professors and friends quickly, almost as an obligation, before moving on to spend time with her new circle. I told myself it was natural for her to grow beyond her beginnings. Is not that what parents want for their children? To have more than we had, but that night in my hotel room, I could not shake the feeling that in gaining her new world, my daughter was choosing to lose me. After graduation, Amanda landed a position at a boutique marketing firm in Manhattan. I called weekly at first, then bi-weekly, as it became clear my calls were an interruption in her busy schedule. She was climbing the corporate ladder with impressive speed, making connections, and building the career she had always dreamed about. I was proud of her drive and success, even as the distance between us grew. 3 years into her career, Amanda met Bradley Winchester III at a charity gala. He worked in finance, came from old Connecticut money, and had the kind of pedigree that opened doors automatically. When she brought him to Chicago to meet me, I tried my best to make a good impression. I cleaned the house top to bottom, bought steaks from the fancy butcher across town, and even picked up a bottle of wine that cost more than I usually spent on groceries for a week. Dinner was tense. Bradley was polite but distant, asking superficial questions about my work, while checking his phone under the table. When Amanda gave him a tour of our modest home, I overheard him whisper, "You actually grew up here," with undisguised disbelief. She quickly changed the subject. 6 months later, Amanda called to announce their engagement. I was invited to meet Bradley's parents at their summer home in the Hamptons the following weekend. I took Friday off work, unpaid, and drove my 15-year-old Ford pickup all the way from Chicago, arriving with a sore back and nervous stomach. The Winchester estate was intimidating. Manicured gardens, a view of the ocean, and a house that could have fit my entire neighborhood inside it. Bradley's father, Harold, shook my hand with the practiced grip of someone used to sizing up others and finding them wanting. His mother, Catherine, air-kissed beside my cheek and immediately handed my hostess gift, a bottle of whiskey from a local Chicago distillery, to a hovering staff member with a murmured instruction I could not quite catch. During dinner served by uniformed staff on china that probably cost more than my monthly salary, the conversation revolved around people and places I had never heard of. When asked about my work, I spoke briefly about a high-rise we were finishing downtown. Harold responded with, "Fascinating how the working class keeps the wheels turning," before turning to Bradley to discuss someone's recent yacht purchase. Later that evening, Amanda pulled me aside. "Dad," she said, in a low, urgent voice, "please try to fit in a little more. The Winchesters are important people, and this weekend means a lot to me." I nodded, swallowing my hurt. For her, I would try. When wedding planning began, I offered my life savings, $60,000 I had put aside over decades of careful budgeting. Amanda accepted it with a quick thank you, but gave me little input into how it was spent. The wedding would be at the Winchester estate with their family, friends, and business associates, making up most of the 400-person guest list. I was allowed to invite 12 people. A month before the wedding, Amanda suggested I take etiquette lessons. "Just so you are comfortable with the formal setting, Dad," she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "The wedding will have 7 courses, 3 wine pairings, and there will be a lot of important people there. I have hired someone to help you prepare." Martha Reynolds, the etiquette coach, was a stern woman in her 60s who spent 3 weekends drilling me on proper fork usage, appropriate conversation topics, and how to give a toast that would not embarrass my daughter. I fumbled through the lessons feeling like a schoolboy failing simple tests, but determined to make Amanda proud on her big day. The wedding was a spectacle of wealth and privilege that made me feel like an intruder despite my role as father of the bride. I walked Amanda down the aisle, my heart bursting with conflicting emotions, pride in her beauty and accomplishments, grief that Diane was not there to see this day, and a deepening sadness at how far apart we had grown. At the reception, Bradley's father gave a 20-minute toast, highlighting the Winchester family legacy and welcoming Amanda as a fresh addition to our distinguished lineage. My own toast, carefully rehearsed with Martha and limited to 3 minutes by the wedding planner, felt hollow and scripted as I delivered it. Later, as I stood alone by the bar nursing a beer, I overheard Amanda speaking to Catherine Winchester. "I am sorry about my father's toast," she said. "He means well, but he has always been rough around the edges. Not much exposure to these kinds of events in his world." Something broke inside me at that moment. The daughter I had sacrificed everything for was apologizing for my existence. I finished my beer, made my excuses, and drove back to my hotel alone, missing the cake cutting and most of the reception. Amanda barely noticed. It was the first time I allowed myself to feel the full weight of the betrayal, but even then I pushed it down. She was happy in her new life, and is not that what parents should want for their children? 5 years passed with our relationship reduced to obligatory holiday phone calls and the occasional stilted dinner when business brought Amanda to Chicago. When she announced she was pregnant, I felt a spark of hope that grandparenthood might bridge the gulf between us. Lily was born on a snowy December morning, and I flew to New York the same day, eager to meet my granddaughter. The hospital was luxurious, more like a hotel than a medical facility. Amanda had a private suite where Bradley worked on his laptop while she rested. When I entered carrying flowers and a small stuffed bear, she smiled tiredly. "Dad, you did not need to come right away. We are still settling in." Nevertheless, the moment I held Lily in my arms, swaddled in a soft pink blanket, I felt a rush of love that brought tears to my eyes. "Hello there, little one," I whispered. "Your grandpa is going to spoil you rotten." Amanda quickly corrected me. "We are going with grandfather, Dad. Grandpa sounds so common." During my 3-day visit, I learned that my access to my granddaughter would come with rules. No visits without advance notice. No cheap gifts that would clutter their minimalist Upper East Side apartment. No speaking to Lily in the colorful language of construction sites. Amanda and Bradley had a parenting philosophy apparently developed with the help of an expensive consultant, and I was expected to conform to it. Back in Chicago, I found myself at a crossroads. After 42 years in construction, my body was telling me it was time to step back. My knees ached constantly, my back went out twice a year, and younger men were being promoted above me. When an early retirement package was offered during a company restructuring, I took it. With no mortgage on my house and modest needs, my pension and savings would allow me to live comfortably. More importantly, they would allow me to be closer to my granddaughter. Without telling Amanda, I sold my Chicago house and bought a small but pleasant one-bedroom condo in Brooklyn, using most of my retirement nest egg in the process. When I called to tell Amanda I had moved to New York permanently, her response was telling. "Oh, that is certainly a surprise. You know how busy we are, Dad. We cannot promise we will see you much more frequently." The subtext was clear. My presence was not particularly welcome. Still, I persisted. I invited them to dinner, offered to babysit. Lily suggested weekend outings to the park. Most invitations were declined, usually with last-minute texts citing work emergencies or previously forgotten engagements. The few times I did get to spend with Lily were supervised with Amanda hovering nearby, quick to correct my speech or intervene if I played too roughly with her. After 6 months of this treatment, I was scrolling through Facebook one evening, one of the few ways I could keep up with Amanda's life since she rarely shared news directly with me, when I saw her post announcing a major promotion. She had been named Senior Director of Client Relations at Horizon Marketing, with a corner office and expanded team. The post had hundreds of likes and comments offering congratulations, including several from family members on Diane's side whom I still kept in contact with. Not once had she mentioned pursuing this promotion during our brief interactions. Not once had she thought to call her father with the good news. I stared at my phone for a long time, feeling the final threads connecting us starting to fray. Then I made a decision. One last attempt to bridge the gap between us. I would surprise her with a celebration dinner at one of the fine dining establishments she frequented. Perhaps in a public setting, with me making every effort to fit into her world, we could find common ground again. I made a reservation at Lumiere, an exclusive French restaurant in Manhattan, with a 3-month waiting list. I name-dropped Amanda's new position and expressed my desire to celebrate her achievement, and miraculously, they found an opening for the following Friday evening. I texted Amanda, "Proud of your promotion. Have something special planned Friday at 7 p.m. Details to follow. Love, Dad." Her response came hours later. "Not sure I can make it. Very busy with transition." I replied simply, "Please try. Important to me." The next day, I withdrew $2,000 from my savings, money I had set aside for condo repairs, and visited a high-end men's store. The salesman, sensing my discomfort but not my budget limitations, helped me select a tailored suit dress shirt, silk tie, and leather shoes that would not look out of place at Lumiere. I spent the next 3 days practicing formal dining etiquette in my condo, using YouTube videos as guides, determined not to embarrass Amanda with any social faux pas. Friday arrived, and with it a text from Amanda. "Fine, I can do quick early dinner," where I sent her the restaurant details, my heart lifting slightly. Perhaps this evening would mark a turning point for us. Perhaps finally, she would see me as someone worthy of her time and respect. Lumiere was even more intimidating in person than in the photographs I had studied online. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over white linen tablecloths and gleaming silverware. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The maitre d' greeted me with practiced charm, taking my new overcoat and leading me to a prime table with a view of both the restaurant and the street outside. "Your daughter will be joining you shortly?" he inquired as I settled nervously into my chair. "Yes, we are celebrating her promotion," I replied, trying to project confidence I did not feel. "Wonderful. May I suggest champagne to begin the celebration?" I nodded, though the prices on the wine list made my stomach clench. "That would be perfect, thank you." As I waited, I rehearsed what I would say to Amanda. I wanted to express my pride without sounding patronizing, to reconnect without seeming desperate. I wanted more than anything to have just one evening where she looked at me as her father rather than an embarrassment to be managed. At 7:15, the door opened and Amanda entered. My heart swelled at the sight of her. Beautiful, confident, so much like her mother in the tilt of her chin and the grace of her movements. But my smile froze when I saw she was not alone. 4 people followed her into the restaurant, all wearing sleek business attire and carrying the easy confidence of people accustomed to such surroundings. Our eyes met across the restaurant. For a moment, Amanda's professional mask slipped, revealing naked shock and something worse, horror. She quickly composed herself and approached our table, her colleagues trailing behind. "Dad," she said, her voice tight. "What a surprise. I did not realize this was your plan." Before I could respond, the maitre d' returned with a bottle of champagne. "Ah, the entire party has arrived. Shall I bring more glasses for the celebration?" Amanda's face flushed. "Actually, there has been a misunderstanding. My father and I were supposed to meet another time. These are my colleagues. We are having a team dinner to celebrate my promotion." I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized what was happening. "But I made this reservation days ago. I texted you about it." "I thought we were meeting for coffee somewhere," she hissed, leaning closer. "Not this." One of her colleagues, a tall man with styled gray hair, stepped forward with a puzzled expression. "Amanda, we do not have a reservation yet. We could join your father if he is celebrating your promotion as well." Amanda's eyes widened in panic. "No, that is not necessary. My father was just leaving, actually. He has another engagement tonight." I sat frozen in my new suit, the champagne cooling in its bucket, as my daughter lied to her colleagues about me. When I did not immediately move, she placed a hand on my shoulder, her fingernails digging slightly into the new wool of my suit. "Dad," she said, her voice low but firm, "please do not make a scene. These are important people from the parent company. Tonight matters for my career." I stood slowly, dignity the only thing I had left to preserve. "I understand. I will leave you to your dinner." The tall man looked confused. "Sir, please do not feel you have to leave on our account." I forced a smile. "Not at all. As Amanda said, I have another commitment. Please take the table. The champagne is excellent, I am told." Amanda was already guiding me toward the door, her hand still clamped on my shoulder. When we reached the coat check, safely out of earshot of her colleagues, her composed facade cracked. "What were you thinking showing up at a place like this? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? These are executives from Sullivan Enterprises. They own our firm. I was thinking I would celebrate my daughter's success," I replied, my voice hollow. "I made the reservation, bought a new suit, practiced using the right forks." "Oh my God," she interrupted, actually taking a step back. "You would have used the wrong silverware, ordered the wrong wine. You would have told one of your construction stories and talked about buildings with these people who run a marketing empire." Each word was a fresh wound. I had known we were different, but until that moment I had not realized how deeply my daughter was ashamed of me, of who I was, of everything I had done to give her the very life she was now using to reject me. "Amanda," I said quietly, "I am your father. I worked 70-hour weeks to put you through Cornell. I held your mother's hand through cancer. Do not start with the blue-collar hero narrative," she snapped. "Do you think any of that matters in my world? Do you think anyone in there cares about your sacrifices or your work ethic? They care about connections, education, sophistication, things you never had and never will have." People nearby were starting to stare. The maitre d' was discreetly moving in our direction. Amanda noticed and lowered her voice, but her words cut no less deeply. "Just go have a hot dog for dinner, loser. That is more your style. Go back to Brooklyn and stop trying to be part of my life when you clearly do not belong." With that final blow, she turned and walked back to her waiting colleagues, smoothing her expression into a professional smile as she approached. I stood there, coat in hand, as the maitre d' opened the door for me with practiced courtesy that could not disguise the pity in his eyes. The cold November air hit me like a physical blow as I stepped onto the sidewalk. I walked without direction, barely seeing the glittering New York streets through the haze of humiliation and grief. My own daughter had called me a loser, had told me in the clearest possible terms that I was an embarrassment she wanted erased from her life. 3 blocks from the restaurant, the smell of grilling meat caught my attention. A hot dog vendor was closing up for the night, his cart still steaming in the chilly air. With a bitter laugh that might have been a sob, I approached him. "1 hot dog, please. All the toppings." The vendor, an older man with kind eyes, nodded and prepared my dinner. "Rough night?" he asked, noting my formal attire. "You could say that," I replied, handing over a $5 bill. "Just found out what my daughter really thinks of me." He passed me the hot dog wrapped in paper. "On the house, brother. Been there myself. Kids sometimes have to lose you before they know what they had." I thanked him and found a bench in a nearby square. As I ate the hot dog, my celebration dinner, I watched well-dressed couples and groups stream in and out of upscale restaurants. I wondered how many fathers sat in fine dining establishments tonight, being treated with respect by their children. I wondered what I had done wrong, or if anything could have changed this outcome. When the last bite was gone, I crumpled the paper and tossed it into a trash can. Then I slowly made my way back to the subway station that would take me to Brooklyn, to my empty condo, to what remained of my life. I did not sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Amanda's words echoing in my mind. "Just go have a hot dog for dinner, loser." The contempt in her voice, the disgust in her eyes. My own child looking at me as if I were something unpleasant stuck to the bottom of her expensive shoe. As dawn broke over Brooklyn, I sat on my small balcony watching the city come to life. Construction workers headed to job sites. Delivery trucks rumbled down streets. The everyday people who built and maintained this gleaming metropolis were beginning another day unnoticed by those who benefited from their labor. That was when it hit me, a memory rising through the fog of hurt and rejection. Sullivan Enterprises, the parent company Amanda had mentioned, the executives she had been so eager to impress. Sullivan, as in Martin Sullivan. 30 years ago, I had been the foreman on a skyscraper project in downtown Chicago. Martin Sullivan had been a young, ambitious developer just starting to build his empire. He had visited the construction site regularly, eager to learn every aspect of the business. Unlike many developers, he did not view the construction crews as interchangeable labor, but took time to learn names, ask questions, and understand the complexities of bringing his architectural visions to life. One stormy afternoon, Martin had been inspecting the 27th floor when a sudden gust of wind dislodged a stack of steel beams that had not been properly secured. I saw it happening from across the floor. The stack beginning to slide, Martin standing directly in its path, oblivious to the danger as he reviewed blueprints with an engineer. I did not think. I moved. Sprinting across the concrete floor, I tackled Martin out of the path of the falling steel with seconds to spare. The edge of one beam caught my leg as we fell, leaving a scar I still carried. But Martin walked away without a scratch. Later in the hospital where I was being treated for my injury, Martin visited. "You saved my life today, Tony," he said, gripping my hand tightly. "I owe you everything. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. I will not forget this." I had nodded and thanked him, but never called in that favor. Construction work came with risks, and I had done what anyone would do. We had exchanged Christmas cards for a few years after, but as Martin's business expanded nationally, and my life became consumed with Diane's illness, we lost touch. Now 3 decades later, I wondered if that debt remained. Not that I wanted revenge against Amanda. Despite her cruelty, she was still my daughter, and I loved her. But perhaps there was a way to reclaim my dignity, to remind her that the loser she was so ashamed of had value she had never recognized. With hands that shook slightly, I found Martin Sullivan's corporate contact information online. His empire had grown exponentially. Commercial real estate hotels and apparently marketing firms like Horizon. I doubted he would remember me or that my call would make it past his assistant, but I had nothing left to lose. I dialed the number expecting to navigate a labyrinth of automated systems. Instead, after identifying myself to a receptionist, I was transferred directly to an executive assistant who asked me to hold briefly. Tony Marshall. A warm, familiar voice came on the line moments later. It has been far too long. How are you, my friend? The recognition in his voice, immediate and genuine, brought a lump to my throat. Martin, I am surprised you remember me. Remember you, Tony, I have the scar from where your watch scraped my arm when you knocked me out of the way of 2 tons of steel. Some things you do not forget. He paused. But I suspect this is not a social call after all these years. What can I do for you? I hesitated, unsure how to explain my situation without sounding petty or vindictive. I think my daughter works for one of your companies. Horizon Marketing. Amanda Marshall Winchester. Winchester Harold's daughter-in-law, the one up for the executive director position. Martin sounded genuinely surprised. Tony, I had no idea she was your daughter. She is extremely talented. Her team has landed 3 major accounts this quarter alone. That sounds like Amanda, I said, with a flash of pride that quickly faded. Martin, I am not calling to interfere with her career. In fact, I do not want her to know we had this conversation. Something happened last night and I found myself remembering our connection. Say no more on the phone. Are you in New York? I am at our headquarters on 5th Avenue. Can you come by this morning, say 10 o'clock? I agreed, thanked him, and hung up, still not entirely sure what I hoped to achieve. But for the first time since leaving that restaurant, I felt something other than humiliation. I felt a small spark of purpose returning. Martin Sullivan's office occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming tower in Midtown. The receptionist, informed of my arrival, escorted me immediately through sleek corridors to a set of double doors at the end of the hall. The office beyond was impressive but not ostentatious. Large windows offering panoramic views of the city, contemporary furniture that invited rather than intimidated, and walls decorated with architectural drawings rather than the expected trophies of wealth. Martin himself rose from behind a substantial desk, looking remarkably fit for a man in his mid-60s, with only his silver hair betraying his age. Tony, he said warmly, crossing the room to grasp my hand in both of his. It is good to see you. You are looking well. A polite fiction given my sleepless night and emotional state, but I appreciated it. You too, Martin. You have built quite an empire since Chicago. He waved me toward a seating area where coffee was already waiting. Built being the operative word. Men like us understand what it means to create something real, something that lasts. He poured coffee for both of us. Now tell me what brought you to my door after all these years. I found myself telling him everything. Diane's death, Amanda's education, her growing shame regarding her background, her marriage into the Winchester family, and finally the humiliating scene at the restaurant. Martin listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. She actually said that to you, "Go have a hot dog for dinner, loser," he asked when I finished. Those exact words. I confirmed, the hurt still fresh. Martin shook his head slowly. Tony, I have 3 children. All of them had every advantage. Private schools, Ivy League universities, travel culture. But the one thing I insisted on was that they understand and respect the value of work. All work. My oldest son spent summers on construction sites. My daughter interned at our hotels, starting in housekeeping. They know that the buildings bearing our name stand because of men like you. He leaned forward. What your daughter said to you. That reflects on her character, not yours. You gave her opportunities you never had, and instead of gratitude, she responded with contempt. That says everything about the person she has become. His words were validating, but also painful to hear. I had failed somehow in raising Amanda, failed to instill the values that mattered most. I did not come here seeking revenge, Martin. I do not want to hurt her career. I just want your dignity back, he finished for me. I understand that completely. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. You know, Sullivan Enterprises has grown significantly since we last met. We now have dozens of subsidiaries, including Horizon. We are also expanding our construction safety division, an area where your expertise would be invaluable. I blinked, confused by the apparent change of subject. My expertise, 40-plus years on construction sites, rising to senior foreman on major projects. That is a wealth of practical knowledge that cannot be taught in any university. Martin set down his coffee cup decisively. I am offering you a position, Tony. Construction safety consultant for Sullivan Enterprises. The salary is $200,000 annually, with full benefits and a company car. You will advise our development teams on practical safety measures beyond the minimum code requirements. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. Martin, I appreciate the thought, but I am retired, and this feels like charity because of what happened with Amanda. His expression hardened slightly. I do not do charity, Tony. I make business decisions. Our company had 3 serious construction accidents last year that cost millions in damages and delays. Having someone with your experience review plans and visit sites could prevent future incidents. He paused. The fact that it might also help restore balance to a situation with your daughter is just serendipitous. I considered his words carefully. The position he described was real work that I was qualified to do. It would give purpose to my retirement years and, yes, perhaps restore some of the dignity Amanda had stripped away. I would need to think about it. Of course. Martin nodded. Take the weekend. But before you go, there is one more thing you should know. He picked up a folder from the coffee table and handed it to me. The executive director position at Horizon that Amanda is being considered for, the board makes their final decision on Monday. This is the contract for the selected candidate. I opened the folder to see a formal employment contract with a blank space where the name would go. Why are you showing me this? Martin's eyes held a mixture of compassion and calculation. Because on Monday, someone will be delivering this contract to the chosen candidate. As a senior executive in the parent company, it could be me, or it could be you. The implication was clear. I would have the opportunity to face Amanda not as her embarrassing father, but as a representative of the corporate leadership she so desperately wanted to impress. The contract in my hands represented her dream job, and I could be the one to give it to her. I am not asking you to deny her this position, Martin clarified, seeing my hesitation. By all accounts, she has earned it on merit. I am simply offering you the chance to reframe your relationship on new terms. I closed the folder, my mind racing with possibilities. I will think about your job offer. As for this, I tapped the folder. If Amanda gets the position, I would like to be the one to tell her. Martin smiled. I thought you might say that. The position is yours if you want it, Tony. Call me Monday morning with your decision. As I left his office, the folder tucked under my arm, I felt something I had not experienced in years when it came to Amanda. A sense of control over my own dignity. Whatever happened next would be my choice, not hers. The weekend passed in a blur of reflection and decision-making. By Monday morning, I had accepted Martin's job offer and received my official Sullivan Enterprises credentials. The corporate ID card, embossed business cards, and company phone felt strange after decades in hard hats and work boots, but they also represented a new chapter, one where my experience and knowledge were valued. Martin called as promised. The board's decision on Horizon's executive director position is finalized, he informed me. Amanda Winchester will be offered the position today. The contract is ready for delivery at your discretion. I took a deep breath. I will do it. The company car is waiting for you downstairs. James will drive you to Horizon's offices whenever you are ready. An hour later, I sat in the back of a sleek black town car, heading toward Midtown, the contract in a leather portfolio on my lap. I was dressed in the same suit I had worn to Lumiere, but today it felt like armor rather than a costume. James, the driver, maintained a respectful silence as I gathered my thoughts. Horizon Marketing occupied 3 floors of a modern glass tower. The receptionist looked up as I approached, her practiced smile faltering slightly at my age and appearance. Not the typical Sullivan executive, perhaps. Good morning. I am here from Sullivan Enterprises regarding the executive director position, I said, presenting my credentials. Her demeanor shifted immediately. Of course, sir. I will let Ms. Winchester know you are here. May I have your name? Tony Marshall, Construction Safety Consultant. I deliberately left out any mention of my relationship to Amanda. Please have a seat, Mr. Marshall. Ms. Winchester will be with you shortly. I waited in the sleek reception area watching young professionals hurry through their morning routines. How many of them, I wondered, had parents they were ashamed of? Parents who had sacrificed to give them the educations and opportunities that brought them to places like this. 10 minutes later, a young assistant approached. Mr. Marshall, Ms. Winchester can see you now. Please follow me to the conference room. I was led to a glass-walled room with a long table and views of the city. Ms. Winchester will join you momentarily, the assistant said, leaving me alone with the contract and my thoughts. When the door opened again, I was facing the window, my back to the entrance. I heard her voice first, professionally modulated and entirely unaware of who awaited her. Good morning. I understand you are from Sullivan regarding the executive director position. I turned slowly, watching, as recognition dawned on her face, followed immediately by confusion and then alarm. Dad, what are you doing here? How did you get in? I gestured to the chair across from me. Please have a seat, Amanda. She remained standing, her professional composure cracking. If this is about Friday night, this is completely inappropriate. You cannot just show up at my workplace. I am not here as your father, I interrupted calmly, placing my Sullivan Enterprises ID card on the table. I am here as a representative of your parent company. She stared at the ID card, then at me, disbelief evident in every line of her face. That is not possible. This is some kind of joke. No joke. Please sit down, Amanda. This is a professional meeting. Reluctantly, she took the seat across from me, her eyes never leaving my face. When did you? Martin Sullivan and I are old friends, I explained simply. We reconnected recently. He offered me a position as construction safety consultant, which I accepted. Martin Sullivan. She repeated, her voice faint. The Martin Sullivan, the founder and CEO. The same. 30 years ago, I saved his life on a construction site in Chicago. He never forgot. I let that sink in before continuing. But that is not why I am here today. I opened the leather portfolio and removed the contract, sliding it across the table toward her. The board has made its decision regarding the executive director position at Horizon Marketing. Amanda's eyes widened as she looked from the contract to me and back again. Her expression cycled rapidly through disbelief, anger, fear, and finally a dawning comprehension of how thoroughly our positions had reversed since Friday night. "You," she began, then stopped, seemingly unsure what accusation to make. "The board selected you based entirely on your performance and qualifications," I said, keeping my voice even. "Your connection to me was unknown to them until after the decision was made." Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the contract, but did not open it. "So this is your revenge, coming here to—" What gloat embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. "Is that what you think of me?" I asked quietly. "That I would use this position to humiliate you the way you humiliated me, that I would tell you to go have a hot dog for dinner and push you out the door?" She flinched at hearing her own words repeated back to her. For the first time, I saw shame in her eyes. Not shame about me, but shame about her own actions. "I am here," I continued, "because despite everything, I am still your father. I still love you, and I am still proud of what you have accomplished professionally, even if I am deeply disappointed in who you have become personally." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. Always the professional. "Dad, about Friday night. I was stressed and caught off guard. Those executives are important to my career, and I panicked. I did not mean—" "You meant every word, Amanda," I interrupted gently. "That is the problem. You have spent years becoming someone who could say those things to her father and mean them. Someone who values status and appearances over the people who love her. Someone who is embarrassed by the very work and sacrifice that gave you the opportunities you now enjoy." A tear escaped, trailing down her cheek. "I do not know what to say." "You do not need to say anything right now. But you do need to decide who you want to be going forward." I nodded toward the contract. "That represents the career you have worked for. You earned it. It is yours regardless of what happens between us personally." She finally opened the contract, scanning the terms with professional efficiency despite her emotional state. "This is more than I expected. You impressed a lot of people, including Martin Sullivan himself." Amanda closed the contract and looked up at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time in years. "How long have you known Martin Sullivan?" "Since before you were born. He was a young developer when I was a foreman in Chicago. He visited the sites regularly, wanted to learn everything about construction. Not many developers do that." I allowed myself a small smile. "He remembers the names of the men who build his visions, Amanda. Despite all his success, he never forgot where he came from or who helped him get there." The implied comparison hung in the air between us. Amanda had the grace to look down at her hands. "I have been awful to you, have not I?" "Yes," I said simply. "You have." "And now you are—" "What, my boss?" "No. I work in an entirely different division. Our paths will rarely cross professionally." I leaned forward. "But I am moving back to New York permanently for this position. I will be here, Amanda, as your father. The question is whether you want me in that role anymore." She was quiet for a long moment. When she looked up, the professional mask had fallen away, revealing the vulnerable young woman beneath. "I do not know how to fix this." "Neither do I admitted. But maybe we can start by having dinner. A real dinner where neither of us is pretending to be someone we are not. I stood preparing to leave. Think about it. My number has not changed. As I reached the door, her voice stopped me. Dad. I turned back. Would Thursday work for dinner? Something tight in my chest loosened slightly. Thursday would be fine. You pick the place. Amanda nodded, then gestured to the contract still open before her. I need to sign this. Should I give it back to you? No. Human Resources will be in touch. I paused. Congratulations, Amanda. You earned this. As I walked out of Horizon's offices and back to the waiting car I carried with me, no illusions that one conversation would heal the years of damage between us. Amanda's shame about her background, her hunger for status, and her willingness to discard people who did not fit her aspirational image were deeply ingrained habits now. But perhaps I thought, as the car pulled away from the curb, we had created an opening, a small crack in the walls she had built around herself. A chance, however slim, to reconnect, not as the people we had become, but as the father and daughter we once were. True healing is never instantaneous. It cannot be forced or rushed, especially when the wounds run deep and have festered for years. In the weeks following our confrontation at Horizon, Amanda and I began the slow, awkward process of rebuilding our relationship from its broken foundation. Our first dinner together was tense. She chose a mid-range restaurant, not too fancy, not too casual, a neutral territory where neither of us would feel completely comfortable or completely out of place. We made painful small talk about her new position, my role at Sullivan Enterprises, and the unusually cold weather. We carefully avoided any mention of Friday night at Lumiere, her words on the sidewalk, or the hot dog I had eaten alone on a park bench. But it was a start. By our third dinner, the walls began to lower slightly. Over pasta at a small Italian restaurant in the village, Amanda haltingly asked about my friendship with Martin Sullivan. As I told her the story of the falling steel beams and the hospital visit that followed, I saw something shift in her eyes. A reevaluation, perhaps, of the man she had dismissed as merely her embarrassing blue-collar father. He never mentioned knowing you when I interviewed with Sullivan Enterprises, she said, puzzled. He would not have known you were my daughter. You use Winchester professionally, and we had lost touch decades ago. I twirled spaghetti around my fork. Besides, Martin built his company on merit, not connections. He would have wanted you hired for your abilities, not as a favor to an old friend. She nodded slowly. I worked so hard to get where I am. Sometimes 18-hour days, weekends, holidays. I earned every promotion. I know, I said quietly. You get that from me. Her eyes met mine, and for a brief moment I saw recognition of our shared traits. The determination, the work ethic, the drive to succeed. Then she looked away, still not ready to fully acknowledge our connection. A month after I delivered her contract, Amanda called with an unexpected request. Would you be willing to meet Lily this weekend? Properly, I mean. At our apartment. Bradley will be at a golf retreat. I agreed immediately, though, with some trepidation. My previous visits to see my granddaughter had been so restricted, so supervised, that I had never felt able to form a real connection with her. Would this time be different? It was. Amanda welcomed me into their home without the usual nervous glances around, to ensure I did not touch anything inappropriate or sit on any furniture incorrectly. Lily, now 5.5, initially regarded me with the wariness children reserve for unfamiliar adults. But when Amanda introduced me as Grandpa Tony, rather than the formal grandfather she had previously insisted upon, something in my heart lifted. Grandpa Tony builds big buildings, Amanda told Lily to my surprise. He helped build some of the tallest ones in Chicago. Like skyscrapers, Lily asked, her interest piqued. Exactly like skyscrapers. I confirmed, kneeling to her level despite the protest from my aging knees. Would you like to see how to build a small one right here? With Amanda's permission, I emptied my pockets of the small wooden building blocks I had brought just in case. For the next hour, Lily and I constructed increasingly elaborate towers on the living room floor, deliberately knocking them down to shrieks of delight before building new ones. When Lily went down for her nap, Amanda brought me coffee in a mug that said, "World's Greatest Dad," a generic item likely from their cupboard rather than purchased for me, but symbolic nonetheless. "She likes you," Amanda said, watching me over the rim of her own cup. "She is usually shy with people she does not know well." "She is a wonderful child," I replied. "Smart, creative. She gets that from you too." Amanda's admission was quiet but clear. "Dad, I have been doing a lot of thinking since everything that happened. About who I am, about what I value." She set down her cup. "I am not proud of the person I became. The things I said to you at that restaurant." "We do not need to talk about that." I began, but she shook her head. "Yes, we do. I was cruel, deliberately cruel. I wanted to hurt you because I was embarrassed, and that says something terrible about me." Her voice wavered slightly. "The thing is, I have spent so many years trying to escape where I came from, to fit into Bradley's world, to be the perfect corporate executive. I lost myself somewhere along the way." I listened silently, giving her the space to continue. "The day you brought me that contract, I went home and looked at old family photos for the first time in years. Pictures of you teaching me to ride a bike, building me a treehouse in the backyard, sitting by Mom's hospital bed day after day." She wiped away a tear. "When did I start seeing those things as embarrassments rather than acts of love?" "People change," I said gently. "We all get caught up in what we think we should be, what others expect of us. But you never changed, Dad. You stayed true to who you are, even when I pushed you away, even when I treated you like something shameful." She reached across the table to take my hand. "I am sorry. So deeply sorry." Those words, so simple and yet so difficult to say, began to bridge the chasm between us. Not completely. We had too much history, too many layers of hurt for that, but enough to continue the journey toward reconciliation. Over the following months, our relationship slowly rebuilt itself. I was invited to Sunday dinners, then to Lily's dance recital, then to their Thanksgiving table where for the first time I sat as an honored guest rather than a tolerated obligation. Bradley remained coolly polite but made an effort at conversation. His parents were absent, spending the holiday at their home in Connecticut. By Christmas, Amanda had taken a remarkable step. She invited me to their holiday gathering, and to my shock, had also invited the Winchesters. When Harold and Catherine arrived, clearly surprised to see me there, Amanda did something I never expected. "Mother, Father," she said, using the formal address they preferred, "I do not think you have been properly introduced to my father. This is Tony Marshall, who built half the Chicago skyline and now serves as construction safety consultant for Sullivan Enterprises. Dad, these are Bradley's parents." The pride in her voice as she described me was unmistakable. Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly, while Harold extended his hand with newfound respect after hearing my corporate title. Their approval or disapproval no longer mattered to me, but Amanda's public acknowledgement of my worth. That was a gift beyond measure. Later that evening, after the Winchesters had departed and Lily was in bed, Amanda found me on their balcony looking out at the city lights. Penny for your thoughts, she asked, joining me at the railing. Just thinking about your mother. How much she would have loved seeing Lily open her presents this morning. How proud she would be of you. Not just your success, but the person you are becoming. Amanda leaned her head against my shoulder, a gesture of affection she had not offered since childhood. I miss her, especially at Christmas. Me too, sweetheart. Every day. Dad, she said, after a comfortable silence, would you be free next Friday evening? There is something I want to do. When Friday came, Amanda picked me up at my condo. She would not tell me where we were going, only that it was important to her. When the car stopped in front of Lumiere, my heart sank. The last place I wanted to revisit was the scene of my greatest humiliation. Amanda, I do not think... Please, Dad, trust me. Reluctantly, I followed her inside. The maitre d', the same man who had witnessed my ejection months before, greeted us warmly. Ms. Winchester, Mr. Marshall, your table is ready. He led us to a private corner where a bottle of champagne already waited on ice. After we were seated, Amanda reached across the table to take my hand. I wanted to come back here, she explained, to replace a terrible memory with a better one, to have the dinner we should have had that night. Before I could respond, the waiter appeared with our first course. Not the elegant French cuisine I expected, but 2 gourmet hot dogs on silver platters. I looked up in surprise. I called ahead, Amanda explained with a small smile. Asked the chef if he could make something special. He was actually excited about the challenge. I looked down at the hot dog, a perfect gourmet version with house-made bun, artisanal sausage, and delicate toppings, and felt tears prick my eyes. In this simple gesture was acknowledgement, apology, and the beginning of true healing. To new beginnings, Amanda said, raising her champagne glass. And to my father, the man who taught me everything important, even when I was too foolish to listen. We clinked glasses, and as we enjoyed our unconventional meal in that elegant setting, I realized that true dignity comes not from titles or status or the approval of others. It comes from knowing your own worth and standing firmly in your truth even when others fail to see it. My relationship with Amanda continues to heal one conversation, one dinner, one shared moment at a time. There are still awkward pauses, still moments when our different worlds collide uncomfortably. But now there is also laughter, honesty, and the growing recognition that the bonds of family, while they can stretch and fray, need never fully break if there is love and forgiveness on both sides. As for me, I have found unexpected fulfillment in my new role at Sullivan Enterprises. My decades of practical experience bring value to sleek conference rooms, where theory sometimes overshadows reality. Martin and I have lunch monthly, 2 old friends who took different paths, but maintained the same core values. I am teaching Lily basic woodworking in my condo with Amanda sometimes joining our sessions, her manicured hands becoming calloused in ways her colleagues would never suspect. Life, like the buildings I helped construct, requires a solid foundation. When cracks appear, as they inevitably will, you do not abandon the structure. You repair, you reinforce, you rebuild stronger than before. Have you ever had to rebuild a relationship that seemed beyond repair? Did you find, as I did, that sometimes the greatest wounds come from those we love most deeply? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey of hurt healing and redemption resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family reconciliation. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, true dignity cannot be taken from you unless you surrender it yourself.